up, so it's fine now. I just got the inside.
Cheers.
Okay, we'll call the committee of the whole meeting for January 10th to order at 12:30 p.m. As for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that the committee of the whole adopt the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting January 10th as presented.
I'll make that motion for you, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that committee of the whole adopt the minutes from the December 13th committee of the whole meeting as presented.
You have my motion, Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. And Beechwood naturalization, is Tom with us? Where's my view?
Hello,
Hey, Thomas,
happy new year.
got your basement reno finished. That's good.
Yeah. Someday.
Someday.
Yeah. I guess happy new year to everybody. The reason why I'm here today is to talk about the Beechwood Naturalization Project Phase 2. What we're looking to gain is feedback from council or endorsement from council on a draft plan to present to the community in terms of public consultation. The public consultation, of course, will be in the form of a virtual platform. I don't know if any of you are familiar with what was done with the Eagle View Bank Protection Project, but it would be a similar platform where there'll be a link provided to the public where they can go onto a website and look at the drawings and put comments and notes in terms of what they think about the project. So again, what we're looking to do is to just get feedback in terms of what we're proposing to put out there. Once, I guess going forward, the next steps, once that's approved, what we do is obviously go ahead with public consultation, gain all of the community's comments and concerns and recommendations, and then return to council most likely in early March to kind of go through those and just to validate and confirm what council wants to do in terms of this project going forward. After that, of course, then it would be finalizing the design and carrying on with getting a contractor to actually do the work. So that's a little bit about the path forward. Again, this is part 2 of the project. Part 1 is the decommissioning, and decommissioning involves removing the roads and sidewalks, removing as much of the utility infrastructure as possible. Out at Beechwood, that work has already been tendered out and council awarded that work last month. And now that the weather is kind of broken, the contractor is likely going to get started on that fairly soon. So that's part 1 is the decommissioning. As I mentioned, part 2, this is the naturalization of the site. So what's going to happen to the Beechwood neighborhood after the roads and sidewalks are removed. So really there's this plan we put together is fairly basic. There's obviously admittingly not a whole lot of detail in it. That was intentional to try to just cover off some of the basics in terms of what may or may not happen back there and just kind of go from there. We found in the past that you almost need to kind of put a plan together for some people to comment on rather than leaving an open canvas. So that was the intent with that. So there's only a few things that are proposed as part of this. The first one, and I think is probably the most important, is to establish an access between both ends of Beechwood, the east and west end of it. And that would be basically to provide connectivity to the Mercer lands and to the river. The reasons for that are related to obviously emergency access in case there's an issue down there, if there's a fire. Fortis also has power line infrastructure that they need to access as well. So, so I would say, I guess in my opinion, I would think the access road connecting both ends of Beechwood to the Mercer lands is probably one of the more important parts of the project. In terms of the dikes and all the work that's happened so far, and in terms of how people have used Beechwood or accessed Beechwood, right now there's an existing trail off of Westtown Dike at the end of McLeod Trail that kind of snakes down and gets access into Beechwood. So it's kind of developed over time, called like a cow trail, if you will. We're proposing to kind of clean that up and gravel it, make it a little bit more accessible for people. Although there's a number of different accesses into the Beechwood area, that was kind of chosen as probably the one that makes the most sense to us. From there, I should back up all of the streets and roads aside from the access that connects either two ends. They'll be basically topsoiled and seeded to a natural vegetation. And lastly, we're proposing a little bit of a parking lot, moving the gates back off of 12th Avenue on McLeod Trail, moving the gates back a little bit to provide a little bit of a parking area so that when people use the Beechwood area and they park off of 12th Avenue, that they have a safe place to park so that they don't block the gate or block the access, or have to kind of pull a little bit of a U-turn on the street to get back into town. So there's also a little bit of a parking lot proposed off of 12th Avenue for access into the Beechwood lands. So that's really about it in terms of the meat and potatoes of kind of what we're proposing today. Again, we're just looking for feedback and endorsement to kind of see what the public thinks about it. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
A couple of things first. When this all started in 2013 and the buyouts were taking place and everything else, the agreement was like Wallaceville, the houses would be removed and that area would be returned to a natural state as a floodway, period. So I'm a little bit confused as to why do we need public consultation for this, as to what they want the area to look like. That's not what we were doing. We were turning it into a natural back to nature, back to the floodway, and stop. Like there's not a lot of consultation that's required in something like that, Tom. So I'm a little bit confused as to why now we want to do public consultation to turn it back to the wild.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of the project, yeah, the agreement has been all along to kind of keep these areas as natural as possible. The thought was just to conduct public consultation to make sure that everybody was on board, or everybody kind of knew what was happening. Craig.
Right. So I guess explaining to people what's happening is different than public consultation with me, which means, hey, what do you want to do in here?
Right.
And for me, that's not up for conversation after what we went through. It's you know, you'll get a million different answers as to what people you'll get, well, let's turn it, why remove the roads? Let's turn it into an RV park. Let's turn it into camping. Let's turn it into this. Let's turn it into that. The answer is no. That is a floodway to protect the town of High River from 2013 ever happening again, period.
Exactly.
That's what the deal has always been. So I'm very concerned with, going down and veering off of the path that we were. I'm very concerned with opening this up for, hey, what do you want to do in there? As far as a couple of things, emergency access, there's already a road there through the gates off of River Road. Coming through, it goes all the way back. You can access all the way back into Mercer's, right?
Yeah, after phase one, it'll be a gravel path, if you will,
Right,
after phase one.
right.
Yeah.
Pavement comes out and that gravel path could connect those two off of the Beechwood berm down onto the Mercer Road, right?
Yeah.
That one I totally get. That's fine. And there's space and everything there. So we're not removing trees and making new pathways to fit a ladder truck through, and moving the gates back. I totally understand that. There's room there and it keeps people from parking on River Road and everything else. What about putting an access in where, rather than moving those gates back, if you go into the beaches field, just to the east of the gates, what if we made the parking area in there?
Yeah,
that's an empty field, right?
Yeah, that's an opportunity. There's a little bit of a gate there, just like the filming people, they utilize that area for parking. So that's a possibility, Craig. Yes. Yeah.
So that's my points, is just going back to the reason why all this happened and why we moved people and people had to leave and rebuild their lives somewhere else and everything else. We got to be very, very careful as to forgetting why we started all this. And when it comes to floodways and flood protection and these areas that people sacrificed and everything else to leave, we got to have a lot of respect for that and a lot of respect for this community as far as opening this up to public consultation under the guise of, hey, what do you want to do in there? Right? That's not up for conversation in my mind. It's a natural return to a natural state. That's where I'm at. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I have to echo your statements with respect to public consultation as well, compared to informing the public. I think it's a good idea to inform the public, tell them exactly what we're doing, but not leave it open for debate or discussion. Questions about the report as designed by Trace. Is Trace a consultant or somebody that we hired to go in there? Is that what that is? Oh,
yeah, Trace, they're in the environmental consultant. Yes.
Okay.
Subcontractors. Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that. With respect to the parking, I would not really support putting it in the beach property. I think that over where you've got it planned now is almost a parking area as it is, because we have to have access to those wells back there, correct?
That's right.
So, and putting it back there, it's a limited area. It'll be a smaller size. We won't have to deal with the push for a bigger parking area and all of those sorts of things down the road. So that's sort of where I'm going. I'm with Craig on the informing the public, but not so much on moving the parking. Thank you.
Councillor Walsh.
Hello. My questions were quite similar to what Jamie and yourself just spoke to, Mayor Snodgrass. What can we do with this land? That was my first thought when we're putting it out to the public for opinion. There isn't anything that we would approach with that. If people choose to go there, it's they could choose to go for a walkabout near the river, just like they might out west of town near, other flood sensitive areas. And I'm in the same position. I think that we should advise the public of what's happening down there, that it's a naturalization and there isn't any additional parking or accommodations made to increase the use because it is in fact a reserved land for the purpose of a floodway. That was my my only input there too.
You, Councillor Gilk-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the other councillors for your comments. I think when I think about that space, I absolutely agree that it is a floodplain and that needs to be respected, but I also know that it gets a lot of use. And so I think from the parking perspective, I'm in agreement with Councillor Kinghorn that I like the proposed location. And I think that it is something that needs to be addressed because it becomes a safety concern otherwise when people are accessing that space anyway. And I think we would be remiss in not making an allowance there in understanding that it is a very used and like for hiking purposes and people out exploring in our area. So I do think that we need to be mindful of that. And certainly that connectivity to the happy trails coming off, is it McLeod Trail or over by the berm there? It's already a cow trail, so it is getting used. So is there a safety perspective we need to be mindful of, and acknowledging that people are going to access it. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and back to Councillor Walsh, your comments on the parking, I completely understand that. Like we don't want, it's a fine balance there, right? With, you know, how much we're encouraging people to use that, but it is being used. And I do see a safety concern off of 12th Avenue because when there gets to be a lot of people on the weekends, they're parking on the sides and just on the edge of 12th Avenue, et cetera. So if we can just move those gates back just to allow that. The accessibility piece, that area is not accessible to all people all of the time. It's just not, and nor should it be. It can be a dangerous area back in there. If you don't have the ability to get around back into a wilderness area, then should not be back in there because that's not the way it's designed. It's a natural area. It's a floodway. Those are the two #1 priorities, and that's it. So got to be very, very careful with how much we're and finding the balance between accessing it safely for those that can and going too far with it and causing liability for the town with too much, right? So I don't know, Tom, does that give you what you need? I think on the public consultation end, what I'm hearing is not so much, hey, what do you want to do back there? But you know, this is what we're looking to do. And when I looked on just quickly a couple of the comments on the town's Facebook post about this area, you know, the comments were leave it alone, put it back to nature and let it be what it is, right? People can access it, and tell you what, when we did that little pathway thing, shit hit the fan with it even doing that little bit, right? So you got to be careful. That's a pretty sensitive area for a lot of people. So does that give you what you need, Tom?
Yeah, I think so. So if I can just confirm, what we'll do is we'll share the plan with the public from an informed standpoint, and then move on with the next steps in terms of detailed design and tendering and get the project underway. Is that?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Good.
That's great. Thank you.
Informing program.
Yes. Sounds
Sorry,
good.
could I clarify further?
No.
Huh?
Don't muddy the waters, literally.
Well, I'm going to anyway. So we're going to inform the public. Are we then not returning to, if council's okay with the plan, is what I'm hearing, we're not returning to council then? We're just going to inform the public, then move to consultation?
Once you have the plan in place, that comes back to council before it goes to the public. Let's not do the pathway plan again, because that. So once you have the plan that's in place that you are going to tender out, I'd like to see that come back to council.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
before it goes to the public and before it goes to tender. Well, it'll have to come back to us to award the tender. So
Yes,
fair.
yes.
That keep us out of the weeds from the last train wreck, Chris?
I believe so. I just one question to everybody around the table. Is this plan that's on the drawing that we see right now, the one that's going to be tendered based upon the feedback that we got from council?
Yeah, I can't see it because I can't access my eye compass from my office here right now. So
Oh,
I have it right in front of me.
okay. But with the parking, I guess the biggest thing is the parking spot remaining off McLeod Trail. If that is to remain and really everything else within it is staying the same, I'm questioning why bring it back if council's satisfied
Okay.
with what you see here.
Okay, I can't see it right now. Let's go to Councillor Kinghorn if there's any concerns that you have.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. The only one additional comment I was going to make is I note that we are planning on pulling out the old chain link fence that was in behind there. They built a sort of a berm in behind there. Is there any reason to consider taking that out? The residents did back some time ago. I'm not sure if it's not really natural. It was something that was built and I'm not sure if it would affect the way the water flows through that area or not. But that might be the only other thing I consider over and above what I've seen on this plan. Thank you.
If I can comment on that, yeah, the chain link fence really doesn't impact anything. It's on top of the berm. It was just seen as something that, doesn't really fit in more or less with naturalization. It's a man-made structure, and really isn't serving much of a purpose. So the thought was to try to remove as much of that fencing as possible. But by all means, it can stay.
Sorry,
Steve,
Tom. No, I'm thinking that's a good thing that we're taking it out. Anything that was created by previous residents, like chain link fence and garbage bins and all that sort of stuff, need to come out of there. And they did create that berm, and whether or not that berm, if we should take advantage and try to get rid of it now, or if leaving it there has no real impact on the overall use of the land. Sorry if I wasn't very clear, Tom.
No, I must have, yeah. We were going to get rid of as much of that as possible. We were going to remove or leave the berms and dikes that were there to protect Beechwood. The intent was with that is if the town were to try to remove it, it may trigger a Water Act approval through Alberta Environment. And we all know what that can bring for all of us. So
Yes.
Just to keep it simple and not, I guess, stick our hands in the hornet's nest, if you will. So
Yeah.
Great explanation, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Because we discussed in the early days that, that berm's kind of a horseshoe looking thing, and that opening up kind of the south end of that berm to allow water to flow through it. But like you say, Tom, if you're opening up Water Act, just leave it alone, or we won't be allowed to do anything. Let's get this done. And then if we want to deal with that in the future, we've got the time to do that. Councillor Barton.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted for clarification. So a couple times I think Chris had mentioned it was McLeod Trail. So I'm just making sure that I understand on the maps that go out that McLeod Trail, I'm guessing, is the intersection the parking lot is at the intersection of McLeod and 12th Avenue. Is that correct?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was. It just, I have never referenced that road as McLeod Trail before, so I just wanted to make sure that that's brought up in the plans, just so everybody's got a good reference for when the public's informed.
So the parking lot is off 12th Avenue though, right? Like the end of McLeod Trail is the old entrance to Beechwood.
Yeah.
Right?
That's correct.
Yeah, but
That's not being-
isn't that road go all the way through? Is that not supposed to be a McLeod Trail all the way to 12th Avenue?
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Do you see
Take
what I'm
the
getting
berm
at?
out of plate. Yeah, now I get what you're saying, Jamie. Yeah.
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 Okay.
But did it used to be, was it McLeod Trail through there? Was it Beechwood Way or something like that, that it turned as soon as you entered Beechwood, the name changed?
I think it did, yeah. I don't know. So anyways, if you
I
just
get
give a
what you're
good
saying.
reference on the map, that'd be awesome.
Does anybody else see on the maps? I'm trying to reset my eye compass on this computer right now. And it's a bit of a challenge. So is there any other concerns on that map? Jamie, Michael, Kelly, Brenda, Jenny?
Mayor, if I may?
Yeah.
I just texted you a picture.
Okay, thank you.
If council sees no significant change from what's being proposed, I'm just questioning whether we take this away, finalize it, and bring it back if there's no significant changes.
That's a big parking lot. Thanks for sending this, Kelly. There's what, 18 stalls in there? 20 stalls?
Yeah, I think the way they designed it is that they were just looking to utilize that whole area. I think you're right.
Is
Greg.
that okay? But here's the thing, Tom. How much wider than the road, or like how much are we creeping in? Because this is where things go south, right? You touch a Saskatoon bush in there.
Yeah, there's an open area in there to your to the west as you drive in.
Okay.
And when they looked at it, they just looked at utilizing that area.
Okay.
Given that, I think if you had 6 parking spots in there, you probably have more than enough.
Yeah, like I think what's shown in the drawing is
Yes, it's quite a bit
excessive.
more.
That's a lot. Yeah, like there's like right now as it is, if there's 5 or 6 vehicles there, there's 1 or 2 that are kind of hanging on 12th Avenue, right? So if we just open it up and had 8 spots.
Okay.
Keep it tight, keep it minimal.
Okay.
We're good, because there's lots of other places to access that area that not everything has to be here, so. I think that's my only comment, is to tighten that up a bit. Back to Jamie. Pardon?
Thanks, Mayor. I kind of disagree with your comments about it being too tight. I think one of the things with my experience, especially with the city of Calgary and natural areas, in order to keep them natural, you actually have to help facilitate and accommodate the traffic, because what's going to happen is if we don't, over time, we're going to start to see people just kind of ransacking the area and making their own ways, right? Yeah. So I don't disagree. We need to be cautious about this whole thing, but I think accommodating I'm just going to use a good example, because I've worked on Nose Hill Park 4 times now, and 3 of the times they've enlarged the parking lots each time, right? So we just got to be mindful of it, is that we can try and discourage them, what we think is discouraging them, and it's not going to discourage them. They'll park along 12th Avenue. They'll do whatever they're going to do. Prime example is, and this is a completely different project, but in George Lane Park, people park along the edge of the roads, the loop road all the time, and that's not meant for parking, right? So there's, I don't know. I digress. I think the parking lot, 18 stalls is a good size to start with, right? That's it.
How many spots you want, folks? Do I need to do an auction again? Councillor Kinghorn?
Thank you, Mayor. The bigger the parking lot, we're more encouraging them to come in. And so I think that if we're going to do anything in there, to do a parking lot of maybe 10, 12 spots is plenty. Over and above that, they'll have to find someplace else to go, because if, like, expanding the parking lot in here is taking away from what we said this area is. We're already starting to create infrastructure in a parking lot. A parking lot, let's face it, that's infrastructure. This is floodway land. It is not for hiking and all the rest of it. People go in there because they want to, but it's not, we're not building a park here for people to enjoy or use. It's a floodway. It's just, it is what it is. The more we create it, try to change it into a park or whatever else, it's just going to bring more and more grief down the road. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, back to your comparison with Nose Hill and George Lane, Councillor Barton, you know, that's not what this area is. It's not a, it's an area that people can access and use, but going back again, number one, it's natural state and it's a floodway. So this is, you know, has been my hesitation with this area and Wallaceville all along, that as soon as you start to do a little bit, it's more and more and more. So I'm okay with the 8 spots, but Councillor Walsh.
Currently, there is no parking off of 12th Avenue. Is that what I'm understanding?
Not actual parking, no, they park with kind of in the gateway there.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. And then further west, am I understanding that there was some access for utility companies?
No, that's the same road.
Oh, okay. Okay. I also am trying to get my head around, I've driven down there and whatnot, but I'm just trying to get my perception of the map and the conversations we're having with regards to which road is which or where these things are. I'm of the belief that I realize it's used and sometimes the charm of these areas is its natural component. There, you know, it's off the beaten path, etc. So I am also with Councillor Kinghorn that, you know, the more we do, the more we're going to, like, then we're putting infrastructure in. So if we're able to put a road and a parking place, making that available in the Beechwood area, we should be doing that in Wallaceville and all of the other things. Natural is natural, and natural doesn't have asphalt, in my opinion. Or, well, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So that's all I had to ask.
Councillor Killick-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Walsh, Kinghorn. I think when I think about Wallaceville, further to your point, Councillor Walsh, there is an asphalt parking, not parking, but there's still that street access as you're coming off. And so there is a place for people to park a vehicle, I think. And so, and even though that is a naturalized state, and it does get a lot of use, because I've walked my dog over there. I've also taken my dog and walked him on the other side over where we're talking about and parked in the ditch. So I do think that it is still a matter of, it's going to get used and we need to acknowledge that. And so, you know, if we're going to quibble over what size of parking lot or how many units to be able to park there, you know, I do think that, you know, more than 10, less than 20, somewhere in there. So what's the magic number, right? But I do think that as it's already presented, if it's something that we can just move forward with that, then I'm certainly in support of that, moving it forward.
Okay, Tom, can you take this little issue back to your designers looking at the area? And I'm kind of max 10. I don't know, there's others that want a lot more, some want none. But can you take this one back to, and just send an email? It doesn't need to come back to council, just kind of what the recommendation is for the amount of area that we have that's the least amount of disturbance, but that addresses 12th Avenue safety issues of getting people off of there as much as we can. Because when I go by regularly now, there's, you know, it's rare that I see more than 6 vehicles there. But the problem is there's only parking for 3 of them or 4 of them, right? So that's, you don't get a lot. They're not lining 12th Avenue because there's so many other ways to access that area. So
And to be honest, I think it's probably something that I think, you would be able to comment on, because if I ask the consultants, they don't know, like they're not here. They don't know how many people park there on a regular basis. Craig, I think, you and I and other people and other counselors that kind of drive by that area kind of know that you're about right. The most you might see is four cars at any given time. So
let me ask you this question, everybody. So is this being funded through the 2013 flood mitigation, like all of that, like that program, right? It's a government Alberta program. Is that correct?
yes, it was a grant actually that came through, was the Road Floodgates grant actually, and it's surplus funding from that grant that's providing the funding to do the beach naturalization.
See, here's my suggestion, because this has been built into other programs that I've worked on in other municipalities, is help facilitate, like they're going to give it right now. I'm guessing that the proposed plan that you have for roughly 18 stalls, why don't we utilize that money instead of cutting it back somehow? Whether it's, maybe we cut back and it's, 14 stalls, and then use the other money for 14 stalls to actually try and address the area, like with some fencing and stuff like that, some naturalized fencing. I don't know. There's lots of different options. I've run across them, but I think we need to take this opportunity to try and I guarantee you, we're going to address this problem, 4, 6, 8, 10 years down the road again, because our community is going to grow and people are going to continue to utilize that area. So I just don't want to have us to keep coming back, and we're trying to mitigate something that we're not going to be able to mitigate. Like we can't stop people from going back there. So, or utilizing it. Right. So anyways, those are my thoughts.
So Tom, I was, sorry, Michael, just give me 2 seconds. I'm in now, and I can get a better look at this. So where this parking pad, and make sure this thing isn't paved. This can just be a gravel pad, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's in that kind of bashed up gravelly area, right? That's just a mess right now anyway. So clean it up and make a little parking area in there. Does it have to have a certain exact number of stalls? No. It's just clean that area up, and that's where you park.
Yeah, we make it work.
If they all drive smart cars, well, you can put 38 in there. Great.
Yeah.
Or 4 pickups.
Don't
Councillor
forget
Nychuk?
plug-in.
And there's no plug-in. We're not running extension cords to you.
Oh,
Councillor
wow.
Nychuk.
We're not very friendly then, are we? This thing isn't entirely funded. Isn't there a 30% cost share on this one?
There is a cost share component to it. Yes, you're right. You're correct.
Yeah, thank you.
But this is, now that I see exactly where we're going here, this is an area that, I get why they want to put it there. And it's easy to do. Smooth it out, gravel it out, we're good to go. Hey, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, however many vehicles we can get in there. It is what it is.
Will there be amenities like garbage can, like minimal stuff just for people, garbage cans or anything like that?
No, I think you haul your own garbage out.
Okay.
Because as soon as you do that, Jamie, you start putting garbage cans in, and this is the problem with that pathway system, right? Is that, Rotary wanted to put garbage cans and all this stuff around. Well, who's going to go clean out the garbage cans? Because they're going to be full in a weekend, right? So who's going to do that? No. So I think it's people's responsibility when they access natural areas. You pack your garbage out with you.
Yep.
Period.
The design
right?
has it. The design has it on there. There's there's garbage, there's dog station. It's on that drawing. You can read
a dog station is fine. I don't know, because you put that there, now we've got town staff that have to go out and clean these garbage cans up we've been talking about this with those pathways and stuff, right? It just gets more more and more money.
We did, and we just put signage up, right? That says, hey,
Yep.
this is a naturalized area. Please bring out all your garbage. Guarantee you there's going to be garbage out there from time to time, but it at least tells the people
It is now.
this is what the intent is.
Councillor Kinghorn?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick note to Tom as well. I know where that parking area is, there's a fairly large chain link fence all in there with gates and all that sort of stuff on it. And we're talking the same area, right?
All right.
I thought there was some fencing in there and some big blocks, concrete blocks, jersey barriers, all that sort of stuff. So we're just gonna clean that all out,
Bunch of
make it a
junk. in
gravel
there,
place,
Sure.
get rid of all the junk, and put up a sign saying, pack your garbage out, and that's it. I'd be good with that.
Clear as mud, Thomas?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Right on. So I don't think this, what I'm looking at now that I can see it, I do not think it needs to come back to council. Is council okay with that? Everything looks good. I get it. All good.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
See ya.
CSA Group, Chris?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So I wanted to bring this direction request to council. We've been asked to be one of 4 pilot programs or pilot communities in Canada. There's 2 in the west and 2 in the east. City of Colwood outside of Victoria has been selected, High River, a Lakeshore community in Ontario, and then a coastal community in Nova Scotia to become pilot communities to build an implementation guide for other communities to increase flood resiliency within their communities. Now, the interesting part behind the guidelines that CSA, the Canadian Standards Association group, put together is that it's been endorsed and supported by the Insurance Bureau of Canada, which is, I think, a foundational move by them to make sure that when we're creating these guidelines and implementing the guidelines, however we choose to implement it, whatever framework it is, that the Insurance Bureau of Canada supports them and you know, in past circumstances, for example, what's happened in the coast in Abbotsford in particular, there's going to be quite a bit of discussion about what's covered and what's not covered when it comes to insurance requirements. And we're already starting to see some of those debates taking place in upper levels of government coming in to fund, for example, farm equipment, which is not a coverable expense under most insurance policies these days. So this is kind of those guidelines. It relates directly back to our standards and our development standards as well that are on the ground. And we update those on a regular basis. And it's taking some free work and some free money from CSA, who's engaged WSP as the consultant to develop this implementation guide for these municipalities, to pilot the implementation guide, and to improve it based upon the feedback from developers, builders, as well as our staff in the engineering department. So I think it, you know, from our opportunity, it's a unique opportunity to be chosen and to be a national leader in demonstrating flood resiliency, as it is a hot topic, not just in this community, but what we've seen in Abbotsford and what we're seeing elsewhere in the community with the impacts of weather variability that's taking place. So that's kind of the premise that we're looking at. You've all seen the report. They've got a whole menu of different water-related guidelines in addition to the flood resiliency requirements. But the key thing is that it's adding capacity. It's adding some free work and free support and consultant services to us at no charge to the community besides our staff to review it and to participate with the other 4 communities in sharing experiences and sharing ideas. So it's a great opportunity. It is up to council whether we pursue this opportunity or not, or we back out. But it is, like I say, a unique opportunity to demonstrate our leadership when it comes to flood resiliency within Western Canada, in particular, and all of Canada. So I'll leave that direction request for questions from the rest of council.
So Chris, if I'm correct, no cost to the town?
Just besides some staff costs.
Okay, next question. Do we have the staff capacity to be part of this?
I believe we do, because we integrate
as we go through the town plan process, the screens keep changing. So as we go through the town plan process, this is guidelines that can be easily implemented and integrated into our town planning process.
Okay.
So it could be part of that overall package of the town plan and sets the vision for flood resiliency for the future for the community. And then it can roll right into our standards that get reviewed by ourselves internally on a biannual or every 3-year kind of basis to update. So it provides us a unique opportunity, but it is entirely up to council whether we pursue it or not.
Okay. Councillor Nychuk.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Chris. IBC doesn't have a stake in this. There's a support organization on the periphery, right?
That's correct. The Insurance Bureau of Canada, I think at the end of the day, they've recognized that the control of their claims lies within local governments. Their increased level of claims is directly related to the growth and development of communities and the risk associated with that and how risky some communities are over others. You combine that with weather variability and the impacts of climate change that we're seeing across Canada. They understand that in order to see cost savings to both them as well as to the residents, as well as to local governments, and as well as to provincial and federal governments, is developing standards that are consistent across the country.
Thanks, Chris.
A great example of one of their standards that they're actually talking about is BC uses a 1 in 200 year floodplain requirement, which we've been pushing very hard for a 1 in 200. Saskatchewan uses a 1 in 500 floodplain requirement. The rest of Canada uses a 1 in 100 floodplain requirement as a measurement. But there's not a lot of data. A lot of the provinces don't have long-term data when it comes to the 1 in 100. And so being on the safer side, both BC and Saskatchewan have chosen higher standards.
Alberta is the lowest in Canada for that standard.
Mm-hmm.
Newfoundland's at 300 to 500 range. And this is what we've been pushing with the CMRB board too. And it's interesting. Maybe this is a good road to try to push this stuff, because CMRB did not want to directly implement that into their plan and push for it with the province because they thought it would upset a developer. So blah blah blah. So I think it's good. I think we can get some good information out of it and help us with good info for the town plan and to really help us really look at what we have in place right now and make sure that we are doing it right, even so at our standard. Councillor Barton.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Chris, did the CSA group give us a criteria on why they chose us? Obviously, a flood, but is there a reason why maybe we, like Craig referenced, the rest of Alberta has a really low standard? Maybe we, based on all the infrastructure work we've done, we've got a 1 to 200. I don't even know, honestly, I don't know what our standard is locally, but did they give you reasons?
Reasons was referrals. It went through, so it was kind of a referral process from other CAOs that recommended that they talk to us, as well as our experience. They're looking for communities that have had relevant experience when it comes to water management issues, rainwater, flooding, those types of things that they can take from practical experience on the ground, take what you've learned and apply that through an implementation guide. Now, I'll be honest, it's probably going to upset some developers as well, and builders in addition, because it's going to probably take a look at, creating a standard within the municipality that is higher than Foothills County or higher than Okotoks. But the goal here ultimately for CSA is to apply this whole standard to every community and to show that every community that it's worked so everybody's on the same plane field. And that the assets that our residents build within our community are protected adequately by the infrastructure and the work that we put in around their house or around their homes. So that's fundamentally the premise behind it ultimately it's about the dollar, right? It's about saving dollars, it's about saving claims, it's about reducing that impact, and it's about reducing mental stress and anguish as well. Seeing what some of the communities in Merritt, they're still not in their houses and probably won't be for another 8 to 10 months. Is some of the conversations that are taking place. So those are the kind of things that we want to continue working towards and taking what we've learned and what we've done here to become one of the most flood protected communities in Canada, if not all of North America, and put that into practice.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, and I certainly agree with it. I think this is too a stepping stone for us to kind of further our knowledge and our experience and everything like that with the rest of Canada. I mean, or even other places. So thanks, Chris.
I'm really interested how the CSA, what they come up with as a standard, when at the end of the day, this is a provincial ruling and a provincial number that unless they adopt it.
What they're
I'm
hoping,
kind of interested as to how that works.
what they're hoping is to see change and societal change at the lowest grassroots level, building up from communities and putting pressure on the provincial and federal governments to make change.
Yeah, well,
That's the ultimate goal.
good to be up. Councillor Killick-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, another positive potential unintended consequence in a good way is that, you know, out in the big bad world, when we hear conversation around High River, oh, didn't that place flood? And it's all about the flood and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But if we can show that remediation's been done, mitigation's been done, forward thinking has been done, it's all been addressed, and that does help further the mandate and discussion around the fact that we're open for business.
You got her.
So I don't see that as being a negative on any day.
No.
And to add to that, Councillor Smith, is the fact that we've talked a bit about this, about the short-term memories that we all have. And how, when it comes to flood, you know, Sumas Prairie, a great example, flooded exactly like it did in 1990. Was a former lake. So when we take a look at those examples, we haven't learned from 30 years ago, and we easily forgot. And not only that, we're going to be talking about through the budget process as well about maintenance planning for our dike system, because that's another thing that is easily cut from any budget in the future. I'm not talking about this council or the next council, but 20 years down the road, oh, they're fine. They're just piles of dirt. No need to maintain them. We're okay. But if you're not doing that monitoring and maintenance for the long term, you've just taken the asset that we've invested in and had grant money for now and thrown it away. And so it's about ingraining this kind of overall society. I talked about societal change, and it's about informing our residents about the societal change and how they have to take ownership and make us held accountable as well when it comes to flood resiliency and climate variability. So,
yeah, thank you.
Good. I think it's a good program. Let's do it.
okay, I'll let them know.
Item 4.3, intermunicipal relations from the county, I guess.
Yeah, and Khalid, our manager of planning services, is here as well. We want, these letters were on the agenda for December 13th, and it was pushed to any further conversation with council in a free-flowing format about some of the feedback and the comments that were received, as well as some of the new stuff, in particular for the Aldersyde area, the changes that they want to propose. We are going to be talking about the Foothills ASP at the IMC meeting on Thursday. That's one of the agenda items. So now's a good time to provide some feedback to inform those members of the IMC of concerns of all of councils. So we wanted to bring those letters back and have that free-flowing conversation if council so wishes. Khalid, anything to add?
Oh, thank you, Chris. No, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. No, I don't really have any additions, but I mean, this is not a formal circulation from the county. It's informal. They have just invited us to undertake a preliminary review of the draft ASP at this point to identify and maybe mitigate any major concerns in advance of the formal 30-day circulation that would be prior to their public hearing. So, I mean, overall, you know, our major concerns is that the ASP does not come with the servicing study. And that is, you know, that's against, you know, best planning practices. It's against everything we know in planning. And at the same time, also, we wanted the ASP not to promote development that would compete with business in our community in the future along that corridor. We don't want to see another gasoline alley like what we've seen outside the city of Red Deer. We want just to ensure that the proposed development is basically complementary to what we are offering in our community. So, you know, and at the same time, when we looked at the interim growth plan prepared by the CMRB, again, there is a major principle, which is clearly principle number one, which says promote integration and efficient use of regional infrastructure. They haven't met that as well, but they have assumed that we've met that principle as well. And so it's really overall, you know, you cannot propose development for a major land like that without really knowing how that land can be serviced in the future. And you counting on unknown factors that may come in your favor in the future. So really, you know, we're not going to recommend challenging this proposal in front of the CMRB, but it is going to be the responsibility of the CMRB administration and their consulting team to really review and make the recommendation. But we just want to make sure that members of council are aware of these concerns. And then when you are at the meeting, you can always share your own opinions as well.
And Khalid, this plan without a servicing plan, it's not going to get off step one with CMRB. That is the number one thing that the CMRB board questions on all these developments is the servicing. How are you going to do it? Where's it coming from? Who's managing it? Blah, blah, blah. So
Exactly.
if there's nothing there, it is not going anywhere.
That's exactly right, Mr. Mayor. I mean, that's why when we've reviewed the ASP and we haven't found the servicing study, that's the first question. Where is the servicing study? And they just don't have it, and they don't want to do it because they said the town doesn't want to provide services. So why should we worry about it right now?
Correct. Okay, Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I recognize we only got 2 minutes until we're supposed to go into our special meeting, but this item is a very, very big item. And for the new council members, I think that we need to bring them up to speed on what this is and what it potentially can be to the town of High River, especially the development on the east side of Highway 2. So I understand our position at IMC and what we're going to bring forward, but I'd like to see a discussion around this topic sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Chris, suggestions as to when that can take place? I agree with Councillor Kinghorn. This is a big deal. The industrial one, not so much, but going the east side of the highway is a massive deal to the future of this town. There's no question.
So they're introducing it to IMC on Thursday. So those members of the IMC will sit through that presentation. We can certainly facilitate a conversation at any of the upcoming committee of the whole meetings as it pertains, probably give us at least a month or so. And also to see what the feedback from IMC and how that conversation goes as well. If they see that there is significant opposition from those members already, They may go back to the drawing board and come back with something different. I don't know. But we can certainly, any of the upcoming CAL meetings that council wishes to target in February or early March, we can certainly facilitate that.
Okay, let's get through the IMC meeting, Councillor Kinghorn, and we'll decide from there as to how fast this needs to go and what information the rest of council needs to be privy to as to where this is all headed. So, is that fair? Yeah, we do need to get into our special, but we do, there's no real big timeline because it's not a public meeting. So, is there any question and answer period from any council members or admin to council? Councillor Killick-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't understand the pushback. Why is there a pushback about doing the study? And maybe that's a conversation that needs a little more time than we have, but I don't understand why.
Pushback on which study?
And what is the AS? I haven't got the acronym down.
The county's ASP on the east side.
Yes.
How to explain that? The county needs to prove how they are going to service water and wastewater needs, where that's coming from, where it's going with any development. And that's the primary reason why the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board exists. It's because of servicing and the challenges of it with increased growth. And there's always been a big concern that's historical from what we've learned in other communities in Alberta, that as soon as you jump the highway with commercial development, it's at a detriment to the town. Whether it's Airdrie, you talk to those guys, as soon as you split your community with a highway like that, you're in. It can do, and what are they? So there's the servicing piece, and then what businesses are you going to be attracting? Commercial, industrial. There's been a campground proposed out there. There's been a big truck gas station and everything, which wouldn't be a big detriment to High River because we don't have all that big truck stuff in town. So those are the kinds of things that we want to see. Where are they going? But as far as what I'm reading in here, there's a few things that are just lacking in what they're doing, and the biggest one is the servicing piece. So until we give our blessing on any of this, the CMRB board, this will not fly without a servicing plan attached to it. It won't even get off the ground.
And
so I don't know why.
Councillor Smith, some background as well to that is that before the terms of reference were even really considered or brought forward from the county on this topic, we made it very clear that water and sewer servicing going across the highway was not coming from High River. And we made that very, very clear and abundantly clear at IMC several times, I believe. Khalid, if you can remind me, I think every single time it came up, we said no water and sewer servicing. Because it is a real threat, and it's also this leapfrog development that we've kind of had conversations about leapfrog development to a certain extent about the damage that it does cause, and that's the main reason Mayor Snodgrass mentioned the CMRB, because the CMRB is intended to stop that leapfrog development, and running just because we can run services across a highway doesn't mean we should. And so it's those types of premises and principles that we need to ingrain, not just in our community, but all the CMRB communities.
Any other questions? Sorry, Kelly, were you done? Good. No further questions. Meeting adjourned at 1:34 p.m. See you in the special.